Today was our first lesson with Sue, who's taking us through the Stanislavski units. First, we went through some of Stanislavski's main ideas, most commonly used techniques, most famous techniques. We talked about truth, belief, circles of attention, imagination, and we did a few warm-up exercises just to get us ready for using these sorts of techniques. We started off with an exercise to warm up our imaginations, where we laid on the floor and we had to close our eyes and calm down our breathing and make sure we were all really relaxed so that we could start focusing on our imaginations. We had to put all our focus onto creating this place in our imagination that was as realistic as possible. And you can achieve this by imagining such intense detail, really specific detail, like what colour things are, anything you can smell, what all your senses can feel. Can you see things? Can you smell anything? What does the place sound like, if there are any sounds? What does it feel like? Can you touch anything, and what does that feel like? And this, the whole point of this was to show how real something can feel if you've got that level of detail in there, and that can be really useful if you manage to use that on stage. It really helps with your own belief that your character is real and you believe in what your character is doing. Speaking of belief, we did an exercise with a crumpled up piece of paper, which we were told to believe was a baby bird. This was passed around the circle, and as we've been told to believe it was a baby bird, we had to treat it as if it was one, and this helped us create a belief that it wasn't a piece of paper at all, it was actually the baby bird. Everybody passed it round very delicately, and even though it doesn't seem like it would have done anything, it really did, because by the end of the exercise, people really had stepped into that belief that it was a baby bird, and you could tell that by people's reactions when the piece of paper got thrown. Everybody seemed quite shocked, and then afterwards we realised it was a piece of paper, but in that exact moment people had been convinced to believe that this baby bird was real. That's really important to use on stage. It can show just how effective trying to believe your situation is real is, because it means that when things happen on stage, your emotions and reactions to that will be a lot more real. They'll be not just realistic, but actually real. This was really important because we learnt that facts and imagination put together makes a really well-rounded character, and that helps the character be all that more believable to an audience. We also talked about circles of attention, which means you focus all your attention on one circle around you. The first circle is about 3 feet wide, and it's quite small, and it just surrounds you, and it can follow you, the actor, around stage and should move with you as you move. It has the effect of meaning you're alone, even though you're being watched by an audience, which makes it should make your actions more natural, instead of seeming rehearsed and unnatural. If this is achieved properly, it can be really useful. We worked a bit on the mind and body working together to recreate an emotion. If you don't necessarily feel the emotion, you need to understand what outward aspects show that emotion. So, for example, we covered breathing as an example that's not just facial expressions and body language that show emotion, but sometimes your breathing can be very important. For example, it's very important for laughter, because laughter is just like sharp breaths outwards. And crying as well, we did as rapid, broken breaths inwards, and it really shows some quite intense emotion just using your breath. Everybody associates it with crying or laughing, and it can be really useful. We also did a little bit of work where we stood in a circle and chose a line from a sheet which we had to deliver to the group, and we would then get feedback on how we delivered it. The aim was to fill the line with some sort of emotion that was believable, even though we didn't have context of where the line should be. And it was quite surprising how much emotion you could actually fit into one line out of context, just using voice and tone, volume and body language was quite important. A lot of people managed to show status quite well using different levels, and some of the emotion shown was quite varied, from depressed to desperate to angry, unhinged, happy, amazed, enthusiastic. A lot of things could have been covered, and some of those actually worked really well. We later worked on, after break we were given a stimulus, which was an envelope with a blank piece of paper on. It was supposed to be a letter, and the information about the letter, all we had was one small thing written on the back of the letter. So ours was this one, which says, it gives you the information about what is on the letter, and we had to create a scene from that information, and just make it as creative as possible, so long as it included believable emotion. And then we got feedback on it afterwards. So we were put in pairs, and this envelope said on the back of it that a lost father, or a father who's lost touch with you, wants to meet you and get back in touch. So I was paired with Anisha, and we worked on some ideas for a while, and eventually decided to go with a character who was not at all pleased to receive this letter, and work on the emotion in that reaction from receiving the letter. Important for this, we used something called the magic if, which meant we got to ask ourselves, what would I feel if this was me? If this was happening to me, how would I feel? It really helps you put you in the place of your character. So we had to work quite quickly, actually, because we'd originally cast Anisha as a father sort of figure. She was playing an older male character, and after being given advice from our teacher Sue, we decided to follow that advice and change her character to something different. So we had a minute to change her character. So when we actually went on to demonstrate to the group what we'd done, a lot of it was improvised and quite changed, because she had changed to a brother character, which worked a lot better, actually. We got some quite good feedback from this as well. For example, I was told that my emotion of the crying and the frustration with the deadbeat dad was quite convincing, which I was happy about. I got told that was quite real and very emotional, quite believable. We were told that as a pair working together, we bounced off each other quite well. We clearly worked well together. Anisha got some really good feedback. Her character was very different to mine, as mine was quite outwardly emotional, and hers was very heavily sarcastic and less outwardly emotional. But the good feedback was in that even though her character wasn't showing as much emotion, it was still clear to the audience that this character was repressing the anger that they felt, which is really good, because not everybody in real life actually wears their heart on their sleeve all the time. And it was really good that was quite realistic. To improve, though, because a lot of it was improvised, sort of done on the spot, we hadn't rehearsed the sort of emotions we were going to do, so it just happened as we went along, which was quite exciting, quite interesting. But had we had more time, I'd have liked to make the emotions more consistent, as I was told that sometimes I dropped the emotions a little bit too quickly as I moved into a different mood, which is something I'd like to work on. Um, but yeah, we worked a lot on the magic if, saying like, if this was me, how would I feel? And then trying to feel that emotion, which is really useful because that helps create more real characters. So that was what we did today, and hopefully we'll be using these techniques and the things that we've learned in our rehearsals from now on.